This is Pastor Jim Womer at Capital Baptist Church. Thank you for joining our series, Conversations on Calm Parenting. My guest is Jonah Kabazi. I look forward to hearing what he has to say. Let's get into it. All right, well, welcome back. This is lesson 3. We're going to talk about how to stop defiance and disrespect and meltdowns. Meltdowns. So Ephesians 6:4 tells fathers not to provoke their children.
Correct.
So what are some ways that, I know you're a perfect father, but what are some
right.
ways, some other fathers you see what are some ways we provoke our
Yeah.
children?
So I really relate to this more as a son, and and when I read this verse as a kid, I'm like, yeah, Dad, don't make me mad, Dad. Um, but it really resonated with me, and as a father now, looking back, I'm like, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of times where my dad has done things and said things that really pushed my buttons and really made me upset, and I may not have been able to share it with him at the time, and may not have been able to articulate it with him, and he may not have known, um, but it really really bothered me, and it's made me very conscientious of how I treat my kids, and how I trying to make sure that I'm aware of who they are as people, and know what they like, know what they don't like, and try and be aware of that. I know I have a weird sense of humor. I like to tease. I like to joke. In the culture in which I was raised in, if I like you, I'll make fun of you. I'll tease you.
He makes fun of me a lot.
If I don't like you, then I'm not gonna make fun of you. I won't tease you. Um, but all joking aside, but that's how you hanging out with your boys, you rib each other, and like, he's got a peanut head. I got a peanut head. Such and such. Oh, look at his ears. And that's how we shared, amongst each other. And I have to be aware that I might be able to do that with one of my daughters, but the other one, she's very very sensitive. She's very very she's a girl's girl. she's my middle one. She's a girl's girl. And if I do things like that with her, I mean, I can tell just immediately from her demeanor and from looking at her face that what I meant as a joke because I love her sort of cut into her as a person, and it's not okay with her. Therefore, even though it didn't come from a mean place from me, because she didn't receive it that way, means that I can't give it to her that way. So I think it just, to not provoke them is to, for me at least, it means know what they like, what they don't like, know what their buttons are, and just do everything you can to steer clear and not step on those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he talks about one way, and also we, the Calm Parenting University speaks about how one of the ways we can frustrate our children is by having unrealistic expectations.
Yep.
And so I think I joked before about how, I stopped asking my kids, "What are you thinking?" Because if when they're little, who knows what exactly they're thinking, and they're not able to articulate it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially with maybe some of the younger children, I find my expectations might be unrealistic. And another thing that it talks about is just how to escalate the situation, or just, I mean, rushing around. For instance, like when we're late, if we're late, do this, do that, do the put on your shoes. They can't function that fast.
Right.
They can't, you know, turn on a dime like
Right.
like we can. And so sometimes it's, I need better planning, or better whatever, just better preparations for what we're going to do. He talks about how not to escalate the situation, and sometimes uh, this has happened probably more than once in my home, where I'm saying, if you do this, then this,
Right.
and my wife's like, yeah, I'm the one who has to live with that.
Right.
Like, you just made this unrealistic, like,
Right.
punishment, and then you're gonna leave for work, and then I gotta
deal with
you've escalated it, and you've left it, and you went to work, and
Yeah.
uh, has there been any times that you can think of where maybe
Oh,
you
dude.
escalated, maybe poured a little gasoline on instead of water onto the situation?
Dude, tons, tons, tons. Fortunately, it's not for me; it's for my wife. But now, all joking aside, when you talked about unrealistic expectations, I think one of the things that I'd like to also tag on to that is also vague
Hmm.
expectations,
Yeah, that's good.
and that's one thing that as parents we need to be very, 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 very careful of. Is when and as they're older, it's a lot easier, but definitely when they're younger, when you talked about getting the kids prepared and I need to do this, I need to do that. You as an older person, as their parents, in your mind, you know where all the bits and pieces of the puzzle need to fit to be able to put it all together for us to be able to get in the car and leave.
Hmm.
Somebody that's 5, 6 years old, they don't have the cognitive reasoning to put all the bits and pieces together. So we need to just say, hey, shoes on. All right, shoes are on. All right, well, shoes don't go on before pants, right? So pants on, shoes on, and to be aware that hey, I might need to slow down and give them the step by step to get them to where I need them to be, so that I can get to where I need to be. Um, and so giving them that to me would be an example of a realistic
Hmm.
expectation and a realistic goal for them to achieve. And when I talk about things being vague, um, without putting too much of my business out on the streets, but one of my girls is a little bit behind in math,
Hmm.
and we're trying to get her caught up, and we can say, hey, I need you to be caught up to lesson 33 before I do, she wants a phone before I get you a phone, or before we do this, and but that lesson 33, we haven't given any kind of real time frame, and here we are, 3 weeks into it. So what lesson are you on? I'm on 50. What, you're only on 15? When are you? But the goal that we gave her was vague. It wasn't
Hmm.
specific. Instead of saying, hey, let's sit down, let's break down these lessons. I need you to do lesson 1, 2, 3 on this day, 4, 5, 6 on this day, and follow up and follow through to make sure that she gets to where she needs to be, so that we can make sure that she's where she needs to be and we get to where we want her to be.
Hmm.
So,
And that makes sense because that's how, we like things to be clear.
yep.
When like at your work, I'm sure if you want your boss to be clear. I had a situation in I was taking a Bible class at a seminary, and I had no idea what the professor wanted, and I wrote a bad paper, and it was just so frustrating
Yep.
to me. And our kids are the same way. They want clear instructions. I mean, I sometimes leave the house and say, I want you to be good for mommy. Well, what does that mean? You know,
Yeah.
and I come home and maybe they weren't, but what do I expect? Because
Right.
I didn't set expectations for what being good for
Good
mommy
means.
might look like.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are guilty of saying like, be good. What does that mean?
Right.
Um, so what would it? So how did I guess with parenting? Sometimes we get into these mind frames where it's like us against them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or if me and my wife have to have a united front.
Right.
You know, it's us against them, and there's this. What would it be like to assume the best out of our kids? A
Mm.
lot of times we
The
assume
worst.
the worst, like, oh, that he never picks up his clothes, or
Right.
you assume like these bad motivations to people, and not just our kids, but in
Yeah.
general. But what would it be like? What does it look like to just assume the best out of our kids?
Man, that's an excellent, excellent, excellent question, and I think that's an excellent way of. I mean, I, I'll be honest. I'm guilty of not doing that. You know,
I am too. That's why I asked.
that's an excellent question, and I think it's good because that's what we always want people to want
Hmm.
from us, right? They want, you have a disagreement with somebody. It's like, well, I had the good intentions, and why didn't you see my intentions behind what I said?
Hmm.
It's not about what I said, but it's what I intended to say. That's what's important. So I think that's very, very, very good. Um, I'm gonna have to digest that.
Oh,
That's homework for me. Homework
homework.
and prayer. Homework and prayer. I think that's, at least out of this discussion, that's one thing I'm definitely taking away is I need to, um, yeah, assume that my child had the best intentions and start from there. And when I have the discussions with them, that's good. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. And not just our kids, but our wives too. You
Yeah.
know, sometimes we have disagreements, and just life in general. We
Mm.
will have disagreements with people, and we just go. You, you made a good point. Like we want people to see, uh, like our intent, or we want them to
Mm-hmm.
think good things about us, and then we see people's actions and don't give them the
Same.
same
Yep.
grace that
Yep.
and I think that's also uh, part of modeling God to our children because yeah, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But once we accept Jesus as our Savior,
Mm.
He takes that away and He sees us as His sons and daughters, and so He sees good in us because He's good and because He paid that price for us. And so, you know, with our kids, we need to, I think it would benefit us and our families. Me personally, I'm talking to myself
Yeah.
as well, to just assume that my kids have the best intentions, that they do want to follow me. So maybe if they're not following me, maybe I should look at some of these other things. Have I frustrated them?
Right.
Have I
Right.
given them an
Right.
unrealistic
Expectation.
expectation?
Yep.
Have I rushed them around? Have I not been patient with them? And so
Mm.
it goes back to the whole thing. Look at us. Look at yourself,
First. Yep.
and you know, is there anything in us that we need to change before we try to help our
Help out
children learn how to change? So,
themselves. Yeah.
well, thanks for the
Amen.
discussion. It
Yeah,
sounds like
this
we
has been
both have
awesome.
some
Yeah.
homework to do. So, thank you.
This has been
Hope that blessed you
wonderful.
too. Thank you for joining our discussion today. I hope it was a blessing. For more information about our church or to connect with our online campus, please join us at capitalbaptist.org.